Good morning, Flip Noise users. Today we're going to look at using external hardware, especially synthesizers, drum machines, anything with external MIDI input on it that you can trigger from a sequencer. In this case, it's going to be Logic. Could be Ableton, Pro Tools, Fruity Loops. So first of all, I'm going to show you what we're aiming to achieve. I've loaded Logic. I've got on the first track I have this analog deep bass. This is preset 38 on my Nord Modular, and this is basically a synthesizer but without the keyboards on it. And then I'm using a audio interface, in this case an external audio for DJ interface, and then also a keyboard with a MIDI interface built in the back, so the MIDI comes out of there and into my Micro Modular. And we'll just have a listen to that, and you can see by turning the volume down, and it's playing the sound from that going into my audio interface and then into Logic, which I can then record. So let's just show you how you can capture that. You might have borrowed a keyboard or rented a keyboard just for a specific album track, in which case you can capture that audio. Simply arm the track and hit R, record. I'm going to switch my metronome off, it's putting you off a bit, there's a little bit of latency, it's just the way I've configured so I can record sound for this screencast. Okay, this is what we're aiming to achieve then. I'm going to mute the original track, don't need the record arm on anymore, all that. Okay, and we should have recorded audio now, which is just here. And then I could disconnect my keyboard because the actual sound's been captured just there. I'm going to show you how to connect up the cables now. First thing I'm going to show you is the MIDI cable. Okay, so this MIDI cable is only able to take data in one direction, so it's important to know on your MIDI device you've got a MIDI in and you've got a MIDI out. It's important that you don't go from in to in or from out to out. It'll be like two cars going down a one-way street. So this is my MIDI. The other end of this comes out of my MIDI interface. Okay, so whichever MIDI interface you select, I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. It wants to come out of that socket and it wants to go into a MIDI in. So in my case, I'm going to put it in there. MIDI cables only go in one way. This little inset here enables you to twist it round until it fits in and then push it in. Okay, right, that's the MIDI in. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to use these cables here. These are 1/4-inch jacks. You know they're mono because they've just got the one stripe there. Stereo would have two for the left and right here if it's headphones. Okay, and on my audio external MIDI device, I've got quite a few. I've got headphones, and then I've got audio in. That's in case I want to use filters in here, so we're going to ignore those today. But these outputs, output 1 and output 2, are what we're looking for. So I'm going to plug my output in there, and then the other end of that cable goes, in my case I've got RCA connections, a right one and a left one. Okay, and then whichever audio interface you're looking at, you want to get an input into it so that you can record it into Logic. Okay, this looks a little bit complicated, this one, but in actual fact the color coding is all to do with DJing with Traktor, so we can ignore that. We're just looking at the what's written on them, and we've got channel A, channel B, and we're looking for outputs and inputs. So we can almost forget about channel B. We're not using that today. I could plug another synthesizer in there if we had a couple on the go. So channel A, we've got output left and right, and we've got input left and right. Okay, so this keyboard needs to be recorded into Logic. So we're going to go in there. And then all I need for the output is to go to my speakers. I've got this contraption. They're just adapters to turn them from 1/4-inch jacks to RCA, because this particular interface uses RCA. So I'm just going to plug those into the outputs, like so. Okay, doesn't look great, but we'll do the job. We've connected up our cables to our external MIDI device, and we are now going to set up Logic to deal with external MIDI data. First thing you need to do is go on to create a external MIDI track. So instead of going on to Audio Software Instrument, we're going to click on to External MIDI, and we're going to create a track. It's going to ask you 2 questions. The first question is, which MIDI port do you want to use? In other words, you could be using an external MIDI interface like this little MIDI man, or more than likely you've got it built into a control keyboard or something like that, or an audio interface. So in my case, I'm going to choose the SL Mark II, and I'm going to choose channel 3. The reason I'm choosing channel 3 is on my device here. If by holding shift down, you can check what MIDI channel you're on. So I'm going to hold shift down, and I'm going to move this, and you can see I've set it to channel 3 there. Okay, and by pressing the keyboard, you can see a little red light shining on there every time I press the keyboard. That tells me that the MIDI is in fact triggering. So you can hit record and record something in. Ignore the metronome for now. Just going to put a load of notes in for you to see. Right, and in theory, just going to put that to the end, put that on, press play on there, and I know I'm receiving MIDI notes because my red light is on there. Okay, and now we just need to hear it. There's no way we can hear it at the moment because the audio is going out of here into the audio interface, but we haven't set up Logic yet. So what I need to do is go to create an audio track. I'm going to create a stereo audio track because I'm using left and right inputs, and I'm going to create that. Okay, so we have got a little monitor here that we can switch on so we can hear that audio coming in. I need to turn my volume up. Okay, and there's our audio that we can hear. Just to show you, and there you have it. If you wanted to record your audio, you simply hit the R key, choose a folder where you want to start recording stuff. So in my case, I'm just going to choose desktop and external MIDI folder there. I'm going to choose that, and then we can start recording. And to start recording, exactly the same process. You can hit R, and whichever track you've got armed, in which case my audio track here, will start recording audio. And you can see, if I open that up, the audio that's been recorded in. I can then turn down the volume on my external keyboard. I can get rid of the MIDI clip if I wanted to, because the sound has been captured there. A couple of things to remember when you're setting up for this project. You do need to go to Preferences, Audio, and choose what output device you want and what input device you want. In my case, the audio for DJ. is my input device, because the external MIDI comes from my external MIDI and triggers this synthesizer, and the audio from that synthesizer then goes into my audio interface, which then goes into Logic, so I can capture it. This is handy if you borrow a keyboard or rent a keyboard from a company just for a specific album track. That way you don't have the expense of buying a big keyboard and only using it on one track or whatever. So if you're using a bit of equipment like the M-Audio Key Studio 49i, you'll notice that it's not just a control keyboard, it's also a MIDI interface built in the back and an audio interface built in the back. If this is the case, you'll need to have a look in the instruction manual to find out if there's anything special you need to set up with the keyboard. For example, you might want to switch the local sounds off. There's a piano built into that keyboard, and you might want to switch MIDI local off. MIDI local switches off the local sounds and enables you to use it as a keyboard to control other sounds. And also on the Key Studio 49i, there is a MIDI out button. It's a little tricky to get to. You need to go to edit mode and then G Shop 2. Thank you. Goodbye.